problems may be very familiar to all of you, but the emphasis of this project is trying to address what's happening with immigrant workers, immigrant low-wage workers in Philadelphia. Many of them are receiving services at this time from different immigrant rights groups, legal services like CLS and Justice at Work, and may have some ancillary benefits from progressive unions like Unite Here, SEIU, the locals of SEIU, AFL-CIO, some other groups depending on particular sectors like Domestic Workers Alliance, Philly Workers Association, Philipposh, etc. But really we're still seeing a tremendous amount of wage theft, discrimination, occupational illness, and injury that are prevalent in other low-wage workers sectors, but based on the fact that there is an additional fear of ICE retaliation and other basic language barrier access issues, even if there are remedies available, there's a tremendous number of access issues that arise in the context of immigrant workers. One area or one avenue for a solution that's been pursued elsewhere outside of Philadelphia is the creation of a worker center or utilization of various worker center models. These worker centers have come about in the absence or the decline of unions to kind of engage with worker populations that were never covered under the National Labor Relations Act, and also to provide a panoply of other services that unions weren't really in a position to provide. And so this model often is kind of tailored to the interests of the specific sector in which the workers are working or the specific population needs. We see nationally worker centers that give Know Your Rights trainings, legal services, language classes, various housing initiatives, things like that, but the preponderance of them all have some centerpiece of organizing and leadership training so that where traditional legal avenues fail or don't do enough or unions are not available as a possible solution, that additional action can be taken. And why I'm here today is the success of any worker center really depends on the buy-in of the community and really getting as much feedback about what's sensed as the needs within that particular community. And so where I would like to kind of open it up for feedback is to just see what you think based on that description of what a worker center is and can be compared to what's available now, what you would think of as the benefits of having a worker center in Philadelphia, what all of you think is the single most, or the largest unmet need in the immigrant population, or particularly the immigrant worker population, and then to get a sense of what other organizations in Philadelphia you're aware of that you think that we should be talking to and bringing into the fold for this kind of project, and what other sort of supportive role this chapter could have in making a worker center in Philadelphia that would be addressing the needs of immigrant workers a success.
Can we first have your name?
Oh, sorry. My name is Josh Schlachowitz. I'm a second-year law student at Temple Law.
Can you tell us about how successful worker centers are that are already developed in other cities?
There's definitely a range of success, but depending on how it's tailored, they can be very successful for fighting specific fights, like the Laundry Workers Center in New York has been successful in establishing a better standards in the workplace for laundry workers. If you look at Louisiana, New Orleans, the New Orleans Worker Center for Racial Justice, which has done a number of things and doing specific campaigns for different sectors and building solidarity across populations and between sectors. So they've done things with the migrant workers that were coming in the aftermath of Katrina, but also building a bridge to black workers that were also locked out of taking some of those jobs that where migrant workers were replacing them. So it's really, you see a lot of successes, but particularly successes where there's a sensitivity to the discrete problems or the unique problems of the specific city and location and groups that are involved. Where there's just a structure that's kind of overlaid, you might have some success, but it's not as successful as where there's actually,
So, I'm founder of Caribbean Community in Philadelphia. I'm from Trinidad, Tobago.
Right.
I recently had an immigration forum.
Okay.
It took me months before I can actually launch it. And when I did, I had the Office of Immigrant Affairs and many other people involved, stakeholders. And what we got, the feedback from what was taking place is that I heard one community leader said to me, and this was so disheartening, that there were people right outside and they were so fearful of coming inside. So there are deep-seated fears within my community,
Wow.
and they're anti-establishment. And it's been going on so long, and we haven't addressed the immigration problems. I think people think social media is a way of addressing problems, and since our current president is here, people get all these erroneous information, they walk away with it. I recently met someone who confirmed 2 years she's been in hiding, 2 years. I met her up in the store, and she said, it's been difficult for me for the last 2 years. She was at my forum, and she said, this helped me a little bit. I've been praying for 2 years, and it's just a whole lot of backstory with her life that I saw. And just to hear, I was in tears. As soon as I walked in, somebody gave me a story about healthcare, and they didn't want to blast it out to everyone. They just wanted to tell me. And before I even began the forum, I was in tears crying about the treatment that they got. So the thickness of the wall is so strong. I actually had the Haitian community in mind up in the Northeast. These are people who I know, friends I know, but the deep-seated fears are so strong. They would go back and forth with me, back and forth. Then finally they picked it back up again. We want it. I said, no, it's done. I already went in a different direction. So long story short, we have to do a lot more clinics, and that's what I'm planning to do. When it comes to the Workers Center, I see it the same. For Miriam to hear the fact that you guys are scared of us, and we're actually, very much an immigrant-friendly city. Right. Like never before. There's so many things going on. We're making so many connections and bridges to reach you, and we still feel like we're not reaching you. So I'm not sure if it's going to work for my community, but I'm willing to sign up and see what can happen. Seeing if we have immigrant clinics that we'll be doing on a more personal basis, right, to walk alongside and diffuse some things that have been so big in people's minds. It's really a lot of scare tactics.
Ron, what is the group that Maureen is in? That Maureen works with?
She worked for the National Service Center.
National Service Center.
National what?
Nationality Service
Nationality
Center.
Service Center. We're interested in immigrants, and actually we've adopted an immigrant family. What strikes me is how broad your goals are. And there's probably 15 or 20 different organizations in Philadelphia already that try to address a lot of these.
Right.
Are you making progress toward maybe some goal that might be unique? For example, the medical care would be pretty unique for migrants, particularly who are living in little facilities around.
So right now, I would say that we're in the earliest phases of this.
Excuse me.
And so we're keeping an eye towards what worker centers have done elsewhere, with a sensitivity to how collaborations can arise, where we acknowledge that referrals to other pre-existing organizations may end up being the best avenue for making sure that there's not duplicate services and unnecessary resources being expended unnecessarily. For example, there's some cities where in-house counsel or a large legal team at a worker center makes sense because there's not so many legal service organizations available. But here, what we've been hearing from talking to different organizations is that, hey, maybe you have feel out whether or not there's some volunteer attorneys that would be willing to come into a worker center in order to take some of the smaller cases that are underneath the radar, because there's so much need. A lot of a CLS or a Justice at Work can't keep all of the cases that come through their door. So we have that kind of attitude about how we can tailor the vision to where the need is. And so right now we're still, though, just in this phase of kind of sponging up all of what everyone is saying in terms of where the need is. But that's definitely the attitude, is that eventually when we move from the convening next Friday to writing a proposal to starting to actually take a leadership team and project where a board of directors would end up being, at each step of that process, there would be more and more refining of what the vision is, like an initial vision for maybe a specific campaign or a specific group of stakeholders that are being targeted, and how that might then build and grow into, offering a wider array of services.
How many are there of you at the moment?
Like I said, this is just an investigatory kind of project. It's also going to have an endpoint of seeking funding, and so.
But I mean, are you the only one at the moment?
So right now, the way that this has worked is that it's a project that's been commissioned by Pennsylvania Citizenship and Immigration it's a great pick. So where you're a member of it, right?
Yeah.
So,
We are a member.
yeah.
I think
so-
it's great what you're
Can I
doing.
interject a point here?
Yeah.
I heard about immigration and medical care. I just want you to know, and you can rely to this Donald Trump if you want. There are now 100,000 foreign medical graduates in this country, immigrants. 100,000. In fact, in late 60s, the immigration law was changed. There was, I believe, that was hard seller, principle, that they changed the immigration law because America had shortage of doctors. And they decided that immigrants, the number, the quota, because the immigration was based on quota, they removed that and they made according to the job, according to the education. And doctors were in the top of the list. That year, 1969, America got 10,000 new doctors, and now is 100,000. Very unique.
Frank,
Yeah, there's two things that come to mind. One is, are you familiar with Philadelphia Unemployment Project?
Yes.
I mean, they're a place that people could safely go to find a job, that they would be protected. Philadelphia Unemployment Project. It's in Philadelphia. They have a lot of connections and even van service and stuff like that. And then the other one I was thinking of is HIAS, which I guess you're familiar with. They have a lot of legal help, for immigrants.
There's one thing, I asked the Asian community about a particular thing concerning immigrants. One of the things we don't do well is do our taxes. Like, how do we safely submit our taxes and work safely here in America? So I was told how they do it. I'm not sure, but and how do you have bank accounts and all these different things? Because these things are layers that make people feel unsafe. When you don't have a social security card, you can't have your money in the bank. You need to have cash. You get paid. You request money in cash. So those simple things build confidence and all that stuff. So there is a way to do it, but there's fears, because if you document anything, you feel like somebody's going to say something that's going to actually, get you. So also we're in the middle of the 2020 census, and April 1st is that action day for the census. So it's a big thing. We need every resident in terms of population, documented, undocumented, all types of people to be counted. And so that citizenship question is very big. That needs to be erased. And country of birth is what we suggest too. And without any, the backlash. So there's fears that you will lose a lot of money in Philadelphia as well as Pennsylvania, as well as state to state. Never before have all the emails and everything and all that's going from the state as well as. So there's a lot of those things that immigrants faced in the city and the state.
yeah, Sue.
I'm a paralegal student at community college, and they have internships. You might look into trying to get an internship program with your group.
Okay.
Because they have some good students, and they're accredited with the bar, even though it's paralegal. And I don't know, have you checked with Jobs with Justice?
Yeah, one of my colleagues has. There's two other students that are also participating in this project right now, and one of them has had a conversation with someone from.
And Bob and I are involved in a group that's kind of weird, actually, but they do a lot of good stuff. Eastern Service Workers.
Okay, no, I'm not familiar.
Yeah,
Where?
there's a little bit of a downside, but they do.
Suggesting.
you probably know, in American law, for some dumb reason, service workers cannot unionize.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
And so they're the poorest of the working poor.
Mm-hmm.
And Eastern Service Workers tries to, they've been around forever,
Okay.
and they try to supplant the union function by giving people rudimentary things like food in order to get them politically enrolled.
Sure.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you've been in touch with other workers.
Susanna, do you want to say something? No.
Yeah, yeah.
Those conversations, the closest one I believe was in New York.
Okay.
There's not many. There's only one tenuously active, I think, in the Pittsburgh area.
The one I'm thinking of is in upstate New York.
Okay.
And I have a connection there, but they deal a lot, I think, there with farm workers. It's in the wine growing district. So, I mean, if you wanted to talk to somebody there, I could put you in touch.
That would be great.
So, I'm going to give you a phone number.
That would be great.
Okay. I can do that.
There's an organization in Philadelphia called the African Caribbean Business Council, and they're actually having an entrepreneurship seminar tomorrow that I'm going to for women. They may be a good
They're not
people.
focused on that, though. They
Well,
have a
the
lot of
worker,
immigrants,
well,
but
they are.
it's small business, African business.
You
Well,
go to a lot of different meetings, you know.
It's a small
It's going
business.
to be very small.
I get
Yeah,
around.
that ACBC is small business.
So maybe that would be
It's immigrants, but business.
So maybe more on the back end, like.
Well, you know,
Sweet.
I mean,
So, more trade and investment, international trade and investment. But I mean, if
They're
we
all-
were to go that.
they're all
basically
workers.
the
And all,
organization.
I mean,
Yeah.
I also go to a Nigerian Catholic church, Igbo church, and they are probably the brightest church and most educated church in all of Philadelphia. But I mean, there's plenty of...
Chief Church?
Hi, Chief.
Chief, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That Chief, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so there are, connections, certainly.
I think it just
I mean, I
need
can-
to
I mean,
go
we can-
around
we-
with this, because between her and I, we have all these other people
Yeah.
in terms of immigrant groups and stuff that we are involved in.
Yeah. I
But
mean,
everyone has a different slant.
I mean, but you have a background
Everyone's
in
different, and
unions.
nobody has a focus
Isn't that-
on workers'
Yeah.
rights, and we
Yeah.
need lawyers. That's the whole thing. We're so lack in lawyers who can just give up their time and services. We don't know who to go to.
How about
I'm talking about real stories.
ACLU. ACLU.
Yeah, they have lawyers that they do. Like, I asked them for lawyers recently at my one of my programs, and they said I didn't have enough at this time to dispense. They gave me resources, but they couldn't offer any lawyers. So, I mean, we're just lacking altogether a lot of, like, labor employment lawyers. You might probably want to enlist employment lawyers, you know, to do something that around the whole, because we can't be unionized, so.
I agree. I think there's actually a need for a group like yours where
I
you
think
can
it's
recruit
great.
lawyers.
Yeah.
And if I ever organized this thing, I would go to the ACLU and get advice as to
Yeah.
what groups need it. And the other group that I happen to know personally is the Education Law Center,
Okay.
which is another group made up entirely of lawyers who could get into how they could help, particularly the migrants, you know, and other immigrants, force educational benefits for these people. That's what those are the two groups that I would approach, because they're groups of lawyers, and that's what you are. And they would be able to tell you what areas can additional lawyers help. I agree with what Miranda said. They're going to say there's not enough lawyers, but what you could do is provide more lawyers.
You won't
That
believe-
would be your
I have one
strength.
particular story. I just walked in. I actually went for a copy of my, what it was, a divorce, something that I went into. That's what I was told. My ex-husband lawyer was there. And the man, from the time before I even opened the door, the story is horrendous. The way how I got treated. And then when I looked inside, and the way the people were treated, he pulled me in the office, and the way I was treated, I was like, and then I started investigating, and they said, oh my gosh, that's just the tip of the iceberg. It's horrible. So we need good lawyers, trusted lawyers. It's a lot. We need students and everything, but trust is a big thing. It's a huge.
Okay, we've
yeah.
run out of time. Has this been helpful?
Absolutely, I really appreciate it.
Good luck.
Yeah, I think that if we can help you in any way in the future, come. It's not that we have a lot to offer as a group itself, but as you can see, there's diverse experience here.
Absolutely.
And there's a definite need for more legal stuff to help, particularly the migrants who are just, they're being used, to work by people, and they go from place to place, and all sorts of legal issues that are there. And I haven't heard anybody any law group that's going to try to help those people, but there are many other groups that could be helped. Anyway, we need to go on.
Absolutely.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much.
Come back and tell us how.
Come back and tell us. Check with Penn, because Penn